The ballroom smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive flowers. By 6 in the evening the place had begun to fill, donors, board members, local business owners, people who preferred their charity with a glass of wine in hand, and their name on a sponsorship banner. I moved through the room with the quiet concentration that comes from months of preparation finally unfolding in public. Table cards were straight. The auction display looked balanced. The lighting technician had finally stopped over, brightening the stage. It wasn't glamorous work, organizing a fundraiser. Mostly it was emails, phone calls, and carefully managed expectations. But when it worked it mattered. The foundation funded housing programs. Real ones. People would benefit from whatever number appeared on the final donation board tonight. I was adjusting the silent auction sheet for a landscape painting when someone touched my elbow. "Everything looks beautiful," one of the board members said. I thanked him, smiled, and scanned the entrance again. My husband was late. That wasn't unusual. He had always treated it like this as optional scenery. Something he stepped into when it suited him. At 6:30, the doors opened again. He walked in, and he wasn't alone. The woman beside him was younger than me. Probably by 10 years. Well-dressed, confident enough to move comfortably through a room full of strangers. He was smiling in the way he did when he believed a room would welcome him automatically. For a moment, I assumed she was a colleague or donor. Then I saw the necklace. A small gold pendant resting against the hollow of her throat. It wasn't elaborate. Just a smooth oval locket with a thin chain. But I knew it instantly. My mother's pendant. After she died, it had been one of the few things I kept close. It stayed in a velvet box in the dresser in our bedroom. I had worn it only twice since her funeral. My husband greeted a couple of donors as if nothing about the evening was unusual. The woman followed his lead easily, shaking hands, smiling. I stayed across the room for a few minutes, watching. Not because I was afraid to approach, but because something in me needed to understand how openly he intended to behave. Then I heard him introduce her. "This is Natalie," he said to a group near the bar. "A friend." Someone complimented the necklace. He laughed lightly. "Oh, that," he said. "It's a family piece." The sentence landed in the room with a softness that only I seemed to hear clearly. A family piece. I felt something inside me become very still. Not rage, not even shock. Just a quiet recalibration of reality. For the next 10 minutes I continued hosting. I thanked a sponsor who had funded 2 housing units last year. I helped a volunteer fix a problem with the credit card reader. The gala moved forward the way events always do, regardless of the private lives unfolding inside them. But the image remained fixed in my mind. My mother's pendant resting against a stranger's collarbone. Eventually I walked across the ballroom. Not quickly. Just the pace of a host greeting another cluster of guests. My husband noticed me first. For a moment his expression flickered between surprise and calculation. "Natalie," he says. "I know who I am," I said gently. I smiled at the woman. "Welcome," I said. "I hope you're enjoying the evening." She looked slightly uncertain but returned the smile. She said, "You organized this?" "Yes." Then I glanced at the pendant. "May I ask?" She hesitated only a moment before nodding. My fingers moved calmly to the clasp behind her neck. The chain slid free easily. I held the pendant in my palm for a second, feeling its familiar weight. Then I looked directly at my husband. "You're right," I said quietly. "It belonged to my mother." He didn't respond immediately. Around us, the room continued humming with conversation. I slipped the pendant into my hand, along with the house. I added. He frowned slightly. I met his eyes. "Check your email." There was a pause in which he seemed to consider whether this was a joke. Then I nodded politely to both them and stepped away. Across the ballroom, the auction coordinator was signaling that the first bidding round was about to close. I returned to the stage area and picked up the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," I said, letting my voice carry through the room. The donors gathered closer. Glasses clinked. Someone applauded. Behind the crowd, I saw my husband pull his phone from his pocket. He scrolled once. Then again, his posture changed almost immediately. Weeks earlier, I had begun noticing things. Late nights that didn't align with work schedules. Charges on our joint account that felt careless. a certain distance in conversations. I hadn't confronted him. Instead, I had spoken to a lawyer. Quietly. The divorce filing had been prepared that afternoon. Along with a clarification of property ownership, the house, purchased largely through my mother's inheritance, had always remained legally in my name. My husband had never bothered to look closely at those documents. Now he was. From the stage I continued speaking. We announced the total for the first auction round. A donor pledged an additional matching contribution. Applause filled the room. My husband stood near the back wall now, phone still in his hand. Natalie was speaking to him quietly. I couldn't hear the words. The evening moved forward. Speeches. More bidding. The final donation tally. When I announced the total funds raised, the room erupted in applause. It was the highest amount we had ever collected. Afterward, people lingered for a while before gradually drifting toward the exits. By 10:30 the ballroom was nearly empty. Volunteers began stacking chairs. I stepped outside into the cool air. The pendant rested in my hand. The chain had warmed slightly from the earlier contact with skin. Inside the building, my marriage had ended not dramatically. Just through a sentence, an email, and a quiet recognition that some things cannot be restored once they are casually given away. I fastened the pendant around my own neck. Then I walked toward the parking lot. There was still work to do tomorrow.